James, this week was an exciting episode, especially for me. Welcome to Alex Reynolds, CEO of Vendelux, former GM at Shutterstock. And Alex and I actually closed a deal between Snap and Shutterstock a few years ago. We closed it at Cannes, at an event. And with his new company, it's all about event marketing. So that's what we're talking about today.
Yeah, it's cool. He's trying to basically turn event marketing into a programmatic ads channel. So you could be more confident that the rosé that you were about to have with him at Cannes would actually lead to some ROI. So it's pretty cool, pretty ambitious, and excited to get into it.
Today, we welcome Alex Reynolds, the co-founder and CEO of Vendelux, an AI-powered event intelligence platform trusted by event marketers and organizers from companies like Okta, Publicis, PayPal, and more. They help businesses discover the right B2B events to attend, generate more leads, and actually measure the ROI of those events. Prior to founding Vendelux, Alex was the general manager of platform solutions at Shutterstock, overseeing a 75-person global team that generated over $30 million of annual revenue and managed partnerships with more than 20,000 companies. Super excited to have you here, Alex. Welcome to the podcast.
Thanks for having me, guys.
You and I first met when you were at Shutterstock, and you were building relationships with platforms like Snap. You had built relationships with platforms like Google and Meta, really helping advertisers kind of take advantage of the creative suite and the creative solutions that Shutterstock had to offer. Can you walk us through a little bit about the history of Shutterstock, your kind of building out that team and what you guys were able to accomplish?
Yeah, absolutely. So, Shutterstock, an image marketplace, which has evolved into other types of content like footage and music, and really just helping to get the raw assets that people need to create in the hands of folks. And so, our team was very much focused on the technology side of things, right? So most customers would come to Shutterstock's website and find an image of a sunset or of people shaking hands or something like that to use in any kind of, boardroom meeting or an ad campaign. But what our team was focused on was largely taking that content, that technology, and making it available on other platforms. So how can we provide the building blocks in the places where people are actually creating websites or emails or ads to, add all kinds of value, not just for Shutterstock and for our partners, but also for the end users of the platform as well.
And, you've been pretty vocal about it, about how events were really a great acquisition and partnership tool for you guys at Shutterstock. Managing 20,000 companies with a 75-person team, the math is kind of insane. But one, how were you guys able to manage that scale of partnership? And then two, start to find more partnerships and the right ones to work with?
It was definitely a tiered model. So I don't know if people were really using PLG back, in that time, but essentially I would almost think of it as a developer community. So, of the 20,000, maybe 16, 17,000 were developers who were building their own projects. Maybe they wanted to create a print on demand business and, they needed the building blocks in an API to make that happen. And so we manage those partnerships more as a community with community managers and events to see those folks. And then for the remaining 3,000 or so, that was more of a tiered model like you would expect with customer success and dedicated partner manager. And, for us, events and conferences, trade shows, when they worked well, they were the single best thing that we could do as a business unit, as a business, right? We would meet amazing new customers like a Snap, or amazing new partners, right? We would see existing partners and, there are plenty of times where a relationship might have been kind of on the rocks, and then we were able to meet with them, sit down, break bread, and really strengthen the relationship and that community aspect as well. So we found that face-to-face interaction was just so critical in everything that we were trying.
And what was there a moment where you're like, these events are killing it for us, someone should create some software to actually optimize this, like every other kind of part of like the B2B marketing stack? Like, what was there kind of like because it's a pretty bold and like ambitious vision that you can optimize kind of in-person relationships. Was there something you were like, I think this is actually doable? Obviously now we know it's doable because you guys have built this company, but was there kind of a moment where you were like, I got this?
Yes. I mean, for us, when we went to great events, it was great. When we went to bad events, you knew immediately, right? You show up and all of a sudden you're saying, oh, yeah, like what am I doing here? Right. And so for event marketers, they're spending months of time leading up to, preparing for that moment. And so we just saw this mismatch, and really it was around the Cannes Lion event. So, every year for 3 years in a row, I felt like we were watching the same movie over and over again, where it was like, hey, should we go back to Cannes Lion? Yes or no? And the first question was always, how did we do this past year? And nobody really knew, right? You kind of point to some random things and, oh, we met this person, or I had this great conversation, but there was no data-driven approach to really know definitively, like, how, what was this like? Whereas with digital ads, right, like you have much better signal around, the performance, the A/B tests. There's just a lot more of a data signal there. So anyway, we would be talking about this event, and it would be thousands of hours of meetings with all the C-level executives just trying to answer a basic question: should we go back to this event? And it would turn out that at the 11th hour, a month before we decide to go, of course, everything is 10 times as expensive as it would have been if we had planned ahead of time. We show up, we get the yacht, we send 30 sales reps, and, the top reps they're going crazy. They're running all over the place. But then you've got reps who are just, sipping rosé all day on the boat. And we get back and the CFO would say, how did we do? And nobody knew. So I looked at my now co-founder, Stefan, and we said, like, look, there has to be a better way to do this. There's so much wasted time and money that is being spent on this channel. And if we can come up with a more data-driven, more productized approach to this, then we can drive all kinds of outcomes that matter for the company.
And, it's interesting you say that, because I have very vivid memories similar at Cannes or MAU in Vegas, but it was always this scramble of the event team obviously putting on a really great experience for the customers, or for, even because Snap is obviously B2C, consumers who are app users coming through and getting an experience with brand. And then the sales team saying, okay, you need to document everything. Who was at the meeting? What was discussed? What were the budgets discussed? And okay, we're going to do a postmortem and try to understand, what was the outcome here? Did we move the needle forward? And yeah, it was never really answered, right? And everyone kind of self-selected the data they wanted to present, because everyone wants to be invited to these tentpole events. And then the smaller events were much more, is it in your budget? Do you think it's useful? Okay, put it on your credit card. And, you and a junior person go, and good luck. But nobody ever followed up. And so, with that range of types of events, right? The tent poles like the Cannes or the Mexicos, and then the smaller events where it's a single salesperson or, a small team. How do you look at, or how do you guys help companies and individuals discover, okay, these are the right events for what I need to do, the right people that are going to be there? And then how do you actually start to measure that ROI beyond just, qualitative data being input?
Yeah. So our fundamental philosophy is that the success of events is all about who you can meet with, right? And so even if the right people are in the room at an event, if you go there and you don't connect with them, then they may as well have not been there. So how can we make it easier to set up those meetings ahead of time while you're there, and then afterwards to help facilitate a great relationship? So, we've built a database of over 100,000 events, speakers, sponsors, and even attendee information. And we'll compare that against pipeline information. So some companies, customers are using, an ideal customer profile, and we'll look at that against our entire database. Others will give us a list of companies or specific people and say, like, these are the, 100 CEOs that I really want to meet with. And then we can help them figure out what events, and more importantly, who to send from their company. Because to your point, right, it doesn't always make sense to do the big activation, spend hundreds of thousands or even millions of dollars on an event if you're really looking to meet 10 people who are going to be there. The best ROI scenario might be to send an amazing sales rep or an amazing partnerships person who can connect with those people, costs you less, and you're still getting the your bang for your buck.
And have you found that, like, it's funny, I was just talking to a friend of mine who runs a food tech SaaS business, and they've been like killing it at trade shows. It's been like absolutely how they've been getting all their customers. Have you found that like you guys have a solution for kind of all types of industries? Does it skew kind of one segment to another, or is it really like, pretty broad and generalized?
It's pretty broad. I mean, our goal is to have great coverage on every B2B event all over the world. I'd say that our customers today are more concentrated in areas like e-commerce and retail, or, data and security, or even just tech. We work with a lot of payment companies. The more different types of companies that people sell to, the harder it is to answer the question, what events should you do? So, for example, if you sell microphones, right? I mean, there's a few highly specialized events, the microphone shows that everybody goes to, and you kind of know who your buyer is. But when we work with someone like Okta or PayPal, right, like they can sell to, pretty much any business out there as long as it's a certain size. So for tech companies like that, it's a much more difficult decision because literally the world of events is almost, overwhelming. So how do you allocate your budget? Maybe you have $1 million, $5 million, $10 million to allocate across all of these different types of events. And so how do you kind of prioritize that to drive the outcomes that matter?
I've worked with some like amazing B2B marketers, and then that were like very data driven, and some that felt like they were a little bit more like experience, sort of gut intuition driven almost. Like, have you found that the teams that are in charge of this are like willing to kind of embrace like the science versus like the art of like this stuff?
Yes. Yes, definitely. I mean, these event marketers, we think of them as the unsung heroes of these organizations. I mean, they are out there putting these events on. It takes months of preparation. You're coordinating all of these different stakeholders, whether it's, sales, partnership, operations, you've got PR involved, like, other marketing teams. So they're literally moving mountains, and yet they are reliant on other stakeholders. So sales, customer success, in order to have a great event. So, we have a customer, I'm not going to name names, but, she put on a great show. She was able to get 175, leads that she knew were in the sales reps pipelines. And then the sales reps didn't action those. And so, that's incredibly frustrating, right? Like, you do all the work, and yet if you don't have that partnership and coordination, then you're not going to get to the outcome that matters. So, when we come in and say, hey, we have this data-driven approach where we can help, kind of have you get a seat at the table, as well as, sort of have that enforcement, then they love it, right? They're so excited about it.
And to that, you talk a little bit about coordination across those teams, but, B2B marketing obviously extends beyond just the teams. There's digital B2B marketing on LinkedIn, on now Intuit has announced ones, email marketing, obviously the sales and PR components. How have you seen all of that work together, right? Organizations really embrace the digital aspects of it, as well as kind of the in-person, as well as the events, and have that work, fully in concert together for maximum ROI.
Totally. I mean, it's a multi-touch attribution world. So, I would be lying if I was sitting here saying, events are the only thing that matter, or, IRL touch points, in-person marketing is the only thing that matters. It is a very, very much a coordinated effort. And so, when we think about event success, having those campaigns go out ahead of time, whether those are SDR campaigns or email campaigns, is critical in order to make sure that you have everything lined up so that you can have the most success at the event itself. And then post-event as well. One of the highest ROI actions that a company can take around events is the post-event, like, hey, I missed you at the event email. That performs really well. So, we think about the life cycle and lifetime of a customer, and there's going to be digital touch points before they become a customer, maybe event touch points before they become a customer, digital and event points during, and when you're looking to upsell and things like that. So it very much goes hand in hand to be the most effective marketing machine.
Yeah, and I know you guys started it during COVID, right? Or
Yes.
right before. And did you guys ever get into like the metaverse event stuff, or was it always like real people are going to be here?
Yeah, great. Yeah, great questions. When COVID hit, we definitely offered virtual events because that's really all that was happening. And so, we figured we would support that. And I think at the time, you had platforms like Hopin where people were thinking that digital was the future and in-person events were not going to come back. When we were raising our initial financing round towards the end of 2021, even a lot of investors were saying, well, what makes you think that people are going to want to meet in person again? And I think we see now that that's wild or, crazy, that like, of course, people are going to yearn for in-person interaction. Like, I'm having fun doing this with you guys remotely, but, imagine if we were at a table, having a few beers or whatever. So it's just a fundamental aspect of human interaction. And I would say that, of the 60 customers that we have and the thousands of free users, the interest in virtual is almost nothing. So that may be a self-selecting sample and just the people that we're engaging with. But I think that digital can be very powerful if you're looking for, scale and reach. So if you want to do a roundtable, you want to reach thousands of people, millions of people, then digital events are great. But that's kind of a webinar, right? So we've been leaning heavily into the in-person interactions. And, I think one more point is just like the traditional roadshow of, when I was in New York, I used to come out to LA and San Francisco, and in one trip, you could see Meta and Google and Apple and Microsoft and Snap, and everybody was at the office, at the campus. They wanted to host you. And so it was this great, interaction. But post-COVID, a lot of people are not back at the office. And so what we're seeing is that events have become even more important because they're really the one place when you can find the people you're looking for in person.
Yeah, it's funny. We recently had on the podcast the co-founders of Fit Insider, which is like a fitness, health, exercise newsletter. And they were telling us about how, like, when they were making investments during COVID, how everyone thought they were like taking crazy bills because they weren't like buying into this whole workout at home thing. They're like, eventually people are going to want to go to the gym. It's like there weren't gyms and then there were gyms and like people like the gym. And so it's sort of the same kind of thing where I think like you look back at COVID, like, yeah, I mean, like it's so funny how people were so willing to drink the Kool-Aid of like, we're never going to go do these. And now like we've been at a few conferences. We were in Vegas, we were in New York, and like it's back. And to your point, kind of like almost more important than ever because it's really hard to go see these people. So the timing of it, and you guys like not like going all in and changing it to Vendelux is probably a good call.
Yeah, I mean, like James said, we've been to a number of events, and we're a much smaller company than PayPal or Publicis. And so how do you for now, exactly. And yeah, but how do you think companies in the startup stage, enterprise stage, and kind of throughout that growth life cycle, how should the approach to events change over time? Obviously, with financial constraints as organizations grow, but just kind of all the changes that take place.
Yeah. I mean, we work with, small companies, 10, 20 people, all the way up to large organizations. And, it's definitely a different type of approach depending upon what you can handle. But, from our perspective, it is really about that in-person component, meeting the right people at the right time in the right place. And so, if you're a startup and you are looking, maybe you just want to meet 5 existing customers and talk to 20 or 30 potential prospects, that's something that you can do at an event, paying for, the travel to get there, right? Like you may not even need to buy a ticket to the event, and actually you can just, go. Maybe you're doing a VIP activation. So you do a great dinner at some, private room. And for a 10th of the cost that you would have paid to sponsor the event, you're able to bring the 10 people that matter most into one conversation.
Yeah. And so you guys are, starting to bring together, and we've talked about a lot, right? The smaller events, the kind of large activations, the multi-touch attribution aspect. You guys have recently launched a product called Fusion that incorporates AI and first-party data. Can you talk a little bit about how you envision kind of AI helping with the measurement of these events and helping streamline a lot of this process?
Yeah, I mean, there's just so much data that's out there, right? When you're thinking about all of the different attendees that have been to events, right? So we have 3+ years of historical data on where folks have been in the past. We're getting information on where they're going in the future. And so you can start to build all kinds of interesting algorithms when you kind of incorporate that information. So something that I learned later on after starting Vendelux is that about 50% of event attendees don't sign up for an event until 2 to 4 weeks before the event actually happens, right? And yet marketers have to choose what events they want to sponsor 9 to 12 months in advance. So you have this pretty large disconnect between when marketers have to decide whether they're going to spend hundreds of thousands or millions of dollars on an event and when you actually know who's going to be there. So we've built a pretty robust predictive algorithm that will look at, things like, of course, if you've been to an event 3 of the last 3 years, there's a good chance you'll be there again, but looking at, LinkedIn data, looking at correlation, coefficients amongst different events. So if you go to a lot of finance events, you're probably going to go to more finance events to be able to have really good signal on, where your targets will be, who you should be sending so that you can make those decisions with more room. And so, one of our customers, a subsidiary of UPS, we worked with them on Shop Talk back in March. And because we were able to provide this information in advance, they were able to book 30 incremental meetings at the event that they wouldn't have had otherwise. They attribute that to Vendelux. And not only that, but because they had preparation time, they were able to do 16 roundtables at the event where they brought multiple stakeholders from the same company. These people got in the room and they didn't even realize that their coworkers were going to be at the event. So they're like, oh, I didn't know, hey, Bob, I didn't know you were going to be here. And so, they were able to bring these kind of different stakeholders together. They had done all the research on who was going to be there. And so, or on who they were using. So they were able to have a really productive conversation. So that lead time of being able to help people understand, where they should go and who they should send, is something that AI and machine learning in general can help a ton on. I mean, going forward, you could imagine kind of like a magic button, right? You tell me how much money you want to spend, and then we can help marketers, not replace marketers, but help marketers to allocate dollars, time to create that perfect event calendar that will allow them to essentially drive all the outcomes that a company cares about, which could be revenue. It could be net new revenue. It could be protecting existing revenue, net revenue retention. It could be brand awareness, recruiting, right? There's so many different things that companies care about when it comes to events. So sort of triangulating across all those different aspects to optimize the outcomes that you care about based on budget is something that AI and machine learning is well suited.
And have you found at all, like, given there's like somewhat of like a marketplace component to what you guys do you find that the supply side is excited about you? I mean, I guess ultimately you're definitely a way for them to drive more revenue, but is there any like that tension between like the demand and supply side in this world, or is that like not really a relevant thing?
It's very relevant. So I would say in general, the marketers have a lot of information that the organizers want, and organizers have a lot of information that the marketers want, but there isn't an easy way for the two sides to share that information, in a protected way, a secure way. And, it's not all of it isn't relevant. So if you have an event like CES with 100,000 attendees, most companies don't care about all 100,000. They care about the 100 or the 1,000 that are going to be relevant for them. So, we focus primarily on productizing for the marketers and the brands because that's the side that we know well. But what's been really interesting and what I've learned over the last, call it 6 months or so, is that the organizers, the supply side, they want to answer a lot of the same questions that the marketers want to answer. So marketer at PayPal cares about, the events that their competitors are sponsoring. Money 2020 cares about, what share of wallet they have from PayPal relative to all the other finance events that are out there. So the data set that we were building and have been building can power workflow solutions and event intelligence solutions for both sides. So we're doing some initial pilots with some large event organizers right now, and that side of the business has accelerated much faster than we've anticipated. So that's a big growth area for us that I'm excited about.
Alex, so, we want to be conscious of the time, but we like to kind of close out with a series of kind of rapid fire questions and just getting your quick thoughts on them. So we'll move on to that. The first one, how does event marketing change over the next 10 years in your mind?
I mean, I feel like the cop-out answer would be AI, because it's like, AI everything, but AI will definitely play a big role. I think going back to what we were talking about earlier, the in-person piece is just going to become even more powerful, right? Like there's so many different sources competing for your time right now, and that's only going to get worse. And so to have one place where all of these people are going for one moment in time for a shared purpose is something that's going to become rarer and more valuable. So being able to maximize your at-bats and your presence in those moments is going to become even more important.
I actually don't think I've ever heard anyone articulate the power and kind of get me so excited about events as you have over the last 30 minutes. So, what to you are some of the biggest misconceptions about event marketing? Because obviously I've had a ton that you've helped with today, but single biggest misconception you think?
I think for sales reps or like on the sales side, non-event marketers, I'm just going to show up and it's going to work, right? So they think, okay, I come here, I work the booth, and we're going to be able to move the metrics that matter. And the reality is to do it right, you need to prepare a lot more than that. Maybe another, more broad misconception is just that events are more for like the brand awareness, right? So it's like, we're going to have the booth and people are going to see us, and we're going to go sponsor we're an insurance company. We're going to sponsor the insurance event because we've always sponsored the insurance event. And it's almost more like, print advertising before the move to digital. Like I think there's a lot of similar gains that can be had by being more data driven around events.
And, there's been a move towards, I think, the importance of creators and communities, especially on digital marketing. But do you think that starts to creep into events? And if so, how does that start to impact what events look like in the future and how event marketers approach it?
Yeah, I think building, fostering community is one of the best, objectives for an event, right? If you can build your own community events around larger tentpole trade shows, you can have your own activations all over the place. But, I think in tandem with the digital components of creating community, it's crucial, or user conference, whatever it is, right? The more that you can get that community together, the better.
So maybe a little more fun question, but you've obviously been to a ton of events. This is your business. What are some of the favorite events that you've attended over the years and why?
And how many events do you think you've been to?
I have been to I'll say hundreds, not thousands, not yet.
You're
but
an event junkie? Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think when I started out, I was kind of more like that typical sales rep or biz dev person where I'm like, oh, of course I want to go to Vegas. I want to go to Cannes. I want to go to Miami and see a few people that matter. But favorite events, I think that's kind of evolved over time, right? To see the power of what can be when you have a prep. Dan, we spent some time at Cannes Lions, so I feel like I kind of, and that was a crucial in getting our part, ink. So, that one definitely comes to another one would be MarTech West. So this was when I was at Shutterstock. I think I sort of knew the power of events, but it was really my co-founder step in when he joined our team, and he had, he knew the playbook. He'd seen a lot of success. And so the two of us went to MarTech West together, and we met some stakeholders at IBM, which then ended up turning into this huge, multi-year partnership with tons of growth and add-ons. And we, from both sides, we could point back to that show. Lots of other fun memories, I'll say, but in terms of thinking about, the power of events, those are some specific.
But awesome, man. Where can listeners find more information about Vendelux or follow you or you're doing any writing?
Yep. Vendelux, we have a pretty active blog. We interview a lot of event marketers and other marketers and do spotlights on, we can share a link to that. We're also pretty active on LinkedIn. And then I do most of my writing on LinkedIn, but I'm occasionally active on Twitter when I see people talking about events.
Great. We'll throw all that in the show notes, make sure people have access. But yeah, thank you for joining us today, Alex. This was great. And hopefully we'll see you at the next event.
Thanks for having me.
Thanks for coming on, man.
Before you go, we need your help. If you enjoyed this week's episode of Taking Inventory, then subscribe or rate wherever you listen to the podcast. And while you're at it, please share this episode or your favorite episode with a friend. We'll be back next week with another episode of Taking Inventory.